love is with no strings attached. Ooh. So you can't be offended. Hey, I invested all this in you. And, because a business transaction, get it. Totally get it. Hey, if you're going to do this, you better do the work and you better that. But when it comes to this, it has to be no strings attached. Otherwise, it's attached to your pride. It's attached to your reputation. It's attached to your skill or whatever. No. Love is no strings attached.
Welcome to the G-Force podcast. I am so excited. Today I get to interview my longtime friend and personal hero, somebody I look up to more than almost anybody on earth, Denise Goulet. She is such an inspiring woman, you guys. It is such a privilege to get to interview her because when she walks in a room, she changes the room. When she walks in, you feel literally the presence of love. You feel God's presence. And it's so cool because what's happening is you feel her heart. I mean, she is one of the most compassionate, if not the most compassionate human I've ever encountered. And she took all of this compassion and she freaking turned it into a force for good organization. And today I get to interview her. You get to hear how she did it, why she did it, and how you can be doing this in your own life. Denise, welcome.
Well, thank you for having me, Britnie. I'm so excited to be on this podcast with you today. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. It's quite an introduction, by the way.
Well, you are a living lot to live up to, so I'm pumped to have you here. So Denise is the founder of Worth Fighting For, and this is the organization I am personally just completely dedicated to. Almost every part of my business goes to continuing to fund her great works and her team. Worth Fighting For, if you don't know, people, is a Las Vegas-based nonprofit that established a anti-human trafficking platform. And their goal is to empower survivors through therapy and healing, as well as educate and equip all ages to be able to identify the signs and the voices in our communities so we can find these people and we can help end this. I picked this organization because in my life, there's a lot of causes. Like there are so many causes to be able to get passionate about. And this is literally the worst thing I can think of. And every day I wake up, I realize how blessed I am and how many people are crying out to be found, to be healed, to be helped. And we can do that. And we can do that by working with people like Denise. So Denise, you have done such an incredible thing, and I want to know really what started this ending human trafficking goal for you. Again, there's a lot of causes. What made you pick this one?
It really started about 28 years ago for me. When we moved to Vegas, we moved here to start a new work here in Las Vegas. And then I knew that prostitution, because at the time you didn't call it sex trafficking or trafficking of any kind, because that was not a word that was found yet. But that had happened, been going on for years and years and years and years. But we were looking at it more from like the prostitution that was going on and all that. So when I got to Vegas, I knew that prostitution was not legal, but it was happening all the time. And I began to think, I don't think one woman that I see that is being trafficked or prostituted, I don't think any of them thought when they were little, when I grow up, I want to be prostituted. When I grow up, I want to be abused, and I want to not have a voice. None of that. And I'm thinking, there's got to be something that is going on in this woman's life that she would actually fall into this trap. And a trap it is. What I found out is that, and throughout the years, and so I began to realize that none of them, of the girls that were being trafficked or prostituted, none of them really intentionally decided to do this. Very, very small percentage. And then I realized that most of them, I asked for one. I'm thinking, I'm going to find one and then start there. And boy, did she come into my life. The second time that I met her, she was ready to receive help from us. we're just like my friends and I, we just wanted to make a change or help women in Las Vegas to find out who they are, restore them, empower them to really live out the lives that they're created to live and to make an impact. Whoops. And so one came and she was on drugs and all of that. But what made her decide to walk away from it, and that's not easy, was one day she was talking to her friend who was about to go on a call also. And she was, she was getting ready herself, and she was not really paying attention a whole lot to what, was being talked about. And then later on found out that she was the last one that her friend had talked to because she was killed by her client. And so she was devastated. So at that point, she had a gun to her head, this girl. And she said, I can't live. I don't want to live. And she literally heard a voice say, go and see those girls that you have met before, this woman that you had met. And so she came and got off drugs and started to make different choices. She got other girls to get out of the lifestyle. Some were dancers, some were this and that, and there's about 20 of them. And at one point, they all said, we want to end this life that we had, and we want to burn all our clothing, all our stuff from the prostitution. We want to burn that on the location where we were. And I'm like, well, I don't think we can do that, but we can cut it up, put it in a bag, and just throw it in a big bin. And here we are. Of course, we have faith, so we prayed in a circle surrounding that big bin, and just leaving their old life behind and finding out who they are, being empowered to live that out. And we started to make a list of all those that were the pimps and the trafficked, the prostituted girls, and started to actually pray, because we have a faith, pray that they would come out, and one by one. And Annie Laubert is one of those girls. And Annie has a destiny house in Vegas for the girls that are in prostitution, and they're coming out, they're being trafficked, and some are going in there for restoration, being empowered, healed, and all of that. So there's so much work to do, because now in 2018, 68% of sex trafficked minors were local to Nevada.
What? 68%?
That's very high. And so what happens is, as you know, Britney, we found out that the pimps, or those that want to become pimps, they have really good training for them.
Yeah, they do.
And I'm telling you, trafficking is from like you're being pimped or groomed. And I have one right now that I'm trying to meet with, because pretty sure she's being groomed. And now she's about to go into, stripping here in Vegas, and doesn't realize that she's going into a trap right now. And so Annie and I are trying to meet with this girl and say, hey, girl, this is what's going to happen to you. And Annie's a good example of, someone who can share that. So
I don't want to interrupt you, but I do want to, for the people not in this world of knowing what the terms are, I want to explain. Pimp, we've all heard it in the rap songs, and it sounds fun, and pimp my ride, and da-da-da-da. But pimp means the salesman of the women, the person who goes and gets the jobs, procures the jobs. And typically these women are not keeping the money. Everybody, well, she chooses to go out there. Really? She's an adult. She can go out there. But what you don't know behind the scenes is that if they don't bring home X amount of dollars because their client doesn't pay them, or they don't get enough jobs that night, they will be beaten until they can barely survive a lot of times, or they'll be cut in a certain way. These pimps are running these women ragged. They're literally selling their bodies, and they groom them, which is another term that you just heard me say. And grooming normally looks like a girl who may or may not have come from a broken family, but typically has come from some kind of a broken family, or running away from a bad situation. Finally, it's this answered prayer of this amazing guy. First time is finally adored, cherished, bought nice things, taken places, moves in with him, whatever. He gets her somehow dependent on him. And then, or him. I mean, again, men are being trafficked too, but this is the typical situation. There are way more women in this. So in this situation, the girl falls in love, completely in love. And then he says something like, oh man, I'm starting to experience financial hardship. Will you just dance at this one place tonight so we can make some money? And she feels indebted to him because he's been providing for her. Maybe she's the reason he's in financial turmoil, blah, blah, blah. And so now she's like, okay, I'll participate. I'll take one for the team. We're going to be family. He wants to marry me. So she'll dance here and there. Eventually he'll start beating her or manipulating her in such a way to where she's not only dancing, she's doing this every night. Now he's pimping her out, and then she becomes one of his hoes. And so these are assets for these guys. So it's just like rental properties, but instead of selling drugs.
And what happens is they're on purposefully looking for a girl who needs love, lodging, or is runaway, or needs money, whatnot. She just looks like she needs. And so they're meeting those needs for about 3 months. The girl falls in love with the guy. They don't know he's a pimp. They have no idea. And then I was even talking with Annie this week, and she said that she herself was a prostitute for many years here in Vegas. So like the glamorous kind of prostitution that used to take place, or the fur coats and everything, and the camaraderie between the girls, that was the glamour of, Vegas kind of. And did she suffer. But she said, I wouldn't leave my pimp. Even if they arrested him, I wouldn't speak against him, you see, because I knew that I would pay for it later, because he will come out and look for her and either kill her, beat her up more and whatnot. So you're trapped. You are trapped. And so it's very difficult to see a girl totally doing away with her pimp. And it's usually not the first time that she's given an opportunity that she's restored. It takes sometimes up to 7 times. Mm-hmm. And it's that one, like I'm calling it worth fighting for, because everyone's worth the fight. Mm-hmm. Everyone, I look at someone and go, I'm going to fight for you and with you. Come on. You've got someone. That's why I say a partnership of any kind like this will bring that girl so much farther, and just really, or that person, so they're worth fighting for.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Annie's got a really powerful testimony. I mean, she talks about how it happened, how she got love bombed, how she got beaten, and how she wouldn't leave. I just want to punch anybody that says, why don't they just leave? I want to punch them in the throat.
Oh, yeah.
And everywhere else, because
it's ignorance.
Ignorant idiot to think that it's easy to leave someone that could do something like that. Mm-hmm. First of all, the people who sell human beings and babies, by the way, that just sell all the way from babies to adults, they don't have much of a conscience. And they do and threaten to do terrible things. And they prove that they're willing to do it. And I've heard stories in rooms with you of women who, again, they didn't want to do it. They didn't even care enough about themselves to not leave. But when their babies are threatened, or your family, they show you pictures of your sister sleeping in her bed, and they're like, if you leave me, I'm gonna chop your sister into pieces. Like they come after the things that you love and cherish, the people you cherish the most.
That's right.
As well as there's extreme manipulation and brainwashing. So for those of you who aren't in this world, there's so much to learn. There's so many things we can do on a practical basis. But the first thing I want you to do is not take a judgmental look of, why don't they just leave?
That's right.
Because I'm warning you now, this is a huge darkness on the earth.
Yeah.
And when you judge like that, like, I don't want to say what's going to happen to you, but I don't want to threaten you either. I'm just saying, like, that is not how we fix it.
Yeah.
That's not how we fix it. There's healing involved. There's trauma. There's, as my adult self, Forbes winner of 6th fastest growing women-owned company in the world, and all these incredible things. And I taught on living in intention. I know God. I know who I am. As an adult with a great family, I have experienced my own love bombing. I've had someone come into my life through love bombing and poison me from the inside out. I lost my identity. I lost all this. So I have not been trafficked, but I totally know why people don't leave.
That's right.
I experienced that, and I've not really shared that much before, but it gave me a grace because I've said, why don't they just leave?
Yeah.
I've said that and I didn't understand it, but to personally experience it with all the confidence that I had before, to lose it and become so dependent on a person, and then have to rebuild my entire life after that. And I had so many things going for me, and I had a lot of money. I didn't have nothing. I didn't have a kid with somebody. I didn't have all these strings, or I wasn't even dependent, and it still was so hard. So I just encourage you, don't say that. Find a way to understand. Hopefully you don't have to go through your own experience, but it has given me a grace to understand that part of it so much more. So
there are so many forms of trafficking, and that's just one of them that we just talked about. The relationship with a boyfriend and then turns into pimp, and sometimes it doesn't. But there's abuse, there's sexual abuse, or there's manipulation and whatnot. And what I've discovered being in helping in this area, even when it wasn't talked about, like 28 years ago, nobody talked about that. It was hush hush. And I even went to a training for the first offender Johns. That was probably 20 years ago, where they put all the first offense of the Johns. So those that bought sex from girls in Vegas, and they put them all in the same room, and they showed them how the girls were treated by the pimps. And are you okay with that? And they would show a picture of a girl that would come in Vegas, let's say 10 years prior, looking all beautiful, thinking she had a job, okay, had been groomed and tricked into, and thinking she had a great job of any kind, but not that. Then she falls into that. 10 years later, she looks like she's 60. Yeah. Or she's found in a desert dead. And so are you okay with that? With videos of her being beaten up because she did not bring in the money. So they were like, oh no. And then here's the diseases that you can get from from buying sex. And so they say, if you do not repeat this, you will not have a record, and your family will not know about you doing this. And that's how they were trying to stop the ones that were buying the sex too. So, but what I'm finding out here in Vegas, and what I would like to do, is to change the law. And the law should be this: the pimp, the only way that he goes to jail is if the girl pressed charges against him.
That's the only way right now?
And I'm like, come on.
Of course they're not going to. Their lives are threatened.
She's picked up and she's put in jail. 90% of the people in jail are the girls. Then this grandma, mom, and this is a generational thing. And so this is not right. We should have like undercover, and we should find out, okay, the stripper there has a pimp. Who is that? She's been groomed. She's a victim. Why are we putting her in prison and then pressing charges against? So there's something wrong here. So I'm going to look into that in this year, because I'm like, this doesn't make sense. So this is just the girls that are being prostituted, and they're often 14, 13, 12, 15, 16. They're young. But there's also the older women that are trapped into it. But you know what? I'm hearing more and more stories of women, mostly women, that have been trafficked as little girls, and now they're telling the story of how they were trafficked. It's horrifying. One of the girls put an article on Facebook, and I don't know how old she is, probably in her 20s, 30s, and here's how I was trafficked. Look, pay attention, be aware, and I'm educating you right now. I was 5, 6 years old. My dad would take me to the amusement park, put me in a little room isolated on the grounds, say, wait right here. Then another man would come, and he would take that little girl out, and he would give her ice cream or whatever, and then perhaps, would molest her and then bring her back. And then dad comes and it takes her by the, so it doesn't look like this kid is being trafficked at all, because anytime that someone would look, she's holding the hand of a man. Wow. In airports and in amusement parks, this was taking place in her life. And she says, this takes place all the time. Wow. Another way that kids are being trafficked, that's in the family. Something, wow. So this is a horrific problem that is global. And there's so many ways that they get to it that it's overwhelming. Like you feel like, are we ever going to find the solution? And we have to start one by one and then educate and empower and help people to prevent even. We're starting a Worth the Fight, we call it. Worth the Fight, self-defense kind of empowerment program that we're starting in September. For men, women, children, and whatnot. We want to, if you're about to be kidnapped or whatnot, or if they're doing things that, this is not okay, this is how you can defend yourself, even bullying and all that. So I'm actually really excited about that because it goes on the prevention end. So, but yeah.
It is horrific. And you told me a story one time about a 4-month-old that was being trafficked by her 16-year-old mother. And she would tell people, this is graphic, people. This is real, though. You need to know. Yes. The mom would say, just put a pacifier in her mouth. She won't scream as loud. While people were raping her 4-month-old, which is just horrifying. Horrifying. So the number one way to stop this is to get rid of the buyer pool. And instead of killing all these guys, which is what I would love to do, of course, we can't really do that. But we can help them to understand, just like the example you shared with the Johns. The buyers are called the Johns. That's just their nickname, guys.
Yes, yes.
To understand that porn, what you're watching, 80 to 90% of those girls are traffic victims. And every time you watch porn, you are promoting these people being trafficked. And what has happened a lot of times is the leaders, the decision makers, and normal people who even want to stand in the fight have been really tempted. They watch this stuff or they've taken part in something, and then forever they feel so guilty that they've done it too, that they just kind of don't look because they don't want to have a Me Too movement fall on them of people who are going after them because they're hypocrites inside. So I want to encourage you, if you have done something like this, watched porn, taken part in trafficking, bought sex before, as bad or guilty as you may feel, just seek healing. Understand that you can still be a force for good. You are not bound to that for the rest of your life. You weren't awake enough. You had whatever going on in your life. Again, it's not something good or necessarily quote unquote excusable. That's not what we're saying. We're saying don't let the past darkness or the lack of awareness block you from actually ending this. There are a lot of Johns. There are a lot of pimps now. There are a lot of people who, even women that were victims that helped victimize other people because they were so brainwashed, that are shifting their life and saying, I've given into this. I recognize now that it's wrong and I want to help. So I don't want you to be blocked from being able to help.
Exactly. In fact, most people, or a lot of people, have probably been sexually abused as they were little. And very often it's one of the reasons that they go into this and this and this and end up being the cruel trafficker or the victim. And there's help for that. I mean, that is what, the minute I hear that someone was sexually abused or even abused of any kind, I always, this is where I want to offer help. Empower them, bring restoration, bring healing. There's therapies that actually help with the trauma of the abuse that took place. That is a method to even help with the brain. Like, we remember this, and when we've been traumatized, it's as if we were traumatized all over again if that is not healed in our lives. So I want to encourage whoever is into pornography, or you're struggling with these kinds of things, of you've received you were a victim of or a survivor of sex trafficking, or any trafficking of any kind, like in any like labor or abuse, there's help. I want to encourage you to get some help there and get some tools in how to be restored and healed and empowered. And actually, once we are, then we can help others.
Yes.
That's the beauty of the gift of restoration and of love. Love fixes a lot of things. Love looks like something, and that's what we're all about. It's because we love, Britney, that we care about that. Because if we didn't love deeply like this, we could just, this is not happening to me. I'm good. This is my cute little world over here. I'm just going to have a little world in my bubble. But no way. When you love deeply, you begin to see what's going on, and where there is no love, you want to bring it there. Yeah.
All right. So this all sounds really beautiful and really happy. And I want to be really real with you listeners always, because being a force for good has some consequences, because there's another side that doesn't want to see this kind of great things happen, doesn't want to see people walk in the fullness of their calling, doesn't want to see people live or experience love. It wants to rob you of everything great. And we're freaking real enough to tell you this can be hard. But I do want to share before we even get into it, because we're about to get into it, people. Greater is he that is in you than he that is in the world.
That's right. Yeah.
And for those of you who aren't even believers, or just whatever, love is more powerful than any form of darkness. And when you engage in that and you focus on that, then it will continue to expand. But I do want to ask you, Denise, you raised your hand to fight against one of the greatest darknesses on the planet.
Yeah.
And I know you're still currently even in the thick of some of the hardest times you've ever had to go through. And I'm sure that it has to do with being willing to fight, being willing to find another way, and being willing to share truth against these huge lies. So what the question is officially, for those who are also standing against darkness and facing hard times, what encouragement do you have, and what do you stand on when things get really hard?
Wow. Well, there is a cost. If it's worth fighting for, it's going to come with cost. It's going to come with sacrifice, as you know. It's going to come with having to overcome fear. There is a scripture that says that there is no fear in love. So if fear is what I'm going to do, man, it makes anything and everything difficult. But when you're constantly rooted and really, really, first of all, you know who you are, and you know whom you are, you're able to pretty much, I just want to I want to sacrifice. I want to give my life away. I don't want to hold anything back. When I'm on my deathbed one day, I want to be so happy with my life that I've lived my life with no regrets. I just want to kind of give an example. When we were reaching out to this one girl and we became friends and all of that, you even met her. And I discovered something about love with this girl that we just lost her about probably 6 months ago, whatnot. We found her, she was rolled over by, we think was a pimp, and it was on camera. So there was an investigation that took place. And that's after we invested time, love, money. We put her in the budget suite so many times, so because she didn't have a place to go after being at the Destiny House and all of that. But she went back. I had to transition home like it was 2 days ago away from putting her in there. And I'm just loving it. I'm seeing, and I don't care how much it costs me. I don't care how much I sacrifice. I know that what we're doing, we are investing in that one person and she's worth the fight. And boy, one time I saw her and she was high and she goes, and I go, I don't care that you're high. I want to help you. And it's just like 2 months later, she was found dead. And love is with no strings attached.
Ooh.
So you can't be offended. Hey, I invested all this in you. I know, because a business transaction, get it, totally get it. Hey, if you're going to do this, you better do the work and you better that. But when it comes to this, it has to be no strings attached. Otherwise, it's attached to your pride. It's attached to your reputation. It's attached to your skill or whatever. No, 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 no. Love is no strings attached. So you love without restriction. There's a saying that says, if you hold on more than you're supposed to, it leads to poverty. But if you and you give with no strings attached, let me tell you, and intelligently. Like, I'm not talking about being stupid, but when you love, you better not be offended. If they don't do what you think love looks like, or restoration looks like, or if it was worth your investment, that's where the sacrifice comes in. And I go, no way, I'm going to be unoffendable in this pursuit of ending trafficking in this, or just bringing value to people, a human being, and saying you're worth the fight in whatever that situation is. So no strings attached kind of love. And boy, it only brings joy. It's that joy. And even though it ended up not so good for me, but what we invested in her, I believe, made a difference for her eternity. So I know that for a fact. God knows the heart of the people, and it's just, but I'm telling you, no strings attached. Yeah.
Girl.
That's a tough one in the business world.
I think that's a very incredible piece of advice, because when you are somebody who cares about sustainability and you want to make sure your time is worth something and you pour into something, you invest in something, it needs to provide a return or you're a failure. Yeah. But the situation Denise is talking about right now, specifically, this girl was helped, still went back to an abusive boyfriend. And he was the one to kill her.
Actually, it was a new one.
Went back
she thought this one was going to be better.
Yeah. But she got into an abusive situation somehow. Yes. And I'm going to share that, like, I actually was with you very shortly after that. And Denise, for a minute there, she was crying. She's like, I feel like a failure. And I love that you're sharing the second part of that story, which is the lesson. And, we're accountable for our intentions. We're accountable for our heart. And your heart was giving her love, and she chose to do what she chose to do. And I love what you're saying, because love has no strings attached. Another way to say it, which I learned a couple years ago, I was on a trip to Africa. We were giving out solar lanterns. We'd raised all this money. I took my whole staff over there. I wanted to show them why I started the company. And I was so excited to give people these lanterns because it was going to change their life. They could finally have school and no longer have to do all these things. And people were really grateful, crying. But then there were a couple people who took more than one and then got really fighty and attitude about it and really mean. And my natural reaction, I'm not going to lie, was well, screw them. They're going to be a freaking jerk. Why? We came all the way over here to help, and you're being ugly to me, and my team. Why do I don't need to help you. That's a natural reaction. But this other guy on the trip said, Britnie, true giving is being able to give without having to see your desired result.
That's right.
Because when you give, it's not about you getting this little high of people being grateful. We don't speak the same language as them. You don't know if they were taking one for their sick neighbor. You don't know that. And so you have to just know that you planted the seed. You did your best. Denise doesn't know what the last moments before this woman got run over were like. I'm positive she thought about you and the love and the light you shared in her life. And at the end of the day, this isn't about us. If you're truly living a life of love and giving, do not stay in an abusive situation. That's not the point. I don't want this to get manipulated and somebody be like, well, they thought, but it means to give. And what you give, somebody may or may not take in the way that you expect them to, but it's not your freaking business.
That's right.
So I love that you
It's
shared.
powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a powerful truth. I remember when we went to Mozambique, in fact, we were at Heidi Baker's on the camps there. And they had just had her daughter's wedding. And so there was a lot of families that had come from all over the place to come to this wedding. And all week she fed them. And so there was hundreds of people. And at one point we were there just for a few weeks, and we were asked to come and distribute bottles of water. And I go, okay, that's interesting. So we go, because I'm thinking they can take them themselves. Like, why do we have to distribute bottles of water? It was actually empty bottles of water used by some of the leadership or whatever. And this was precious to them, the poor, because they can fill it up with their own water that would actually make us sick. Okay. They were fighting over empty bottles of water. We had to say, you have one already. I wasn't doing it, but I mean, because they were taking more than one. And this is what I realized. I'm like, they have the poverty mentality.
Mm.
They are there because they're poor. And the poverty mentality says, you better take as much as you can because you're going to run out.
Yeah. Running out for them means death. It doesn't mean that for us, like we can just go to Walmart or wherever. It's not accessible. It means you will die if you do not take this now. Or someone you love will die.
Exactly. And so to love someone is to understand that. Is to have that kind of compassion. So it's a process. It's a journey, that we go through, that we are going through. So
I love it. So real quick, there's a lot of people really passionate about getting into this, and most people don't know where to start. What resources would you suggest people do, or how can people get involved with Worth Fighting For?
I truly believe that it's the responsibility of every adult, whether you're a parent or not, to become aware, educated, and see what area they want to help. In prevention, perhaps, in educating, and they want to donate. They want to, if they have money and it's, hey, where do I get? Help us out to do documentaries that will actually educate, empower, bring prevention and all of that. But I think the parents need to start in the home. So, for example, I had a family that lived here for just a few days in my casita, and they had, and I know them, and the boy is about 10 years old, and he was playing Fortnite. It's a game. It's the most useful game in trafficking children. The most popular, but the one that the pedophiles are going on. See, they don't know that. This is, you know why? Because you can play with anyone. You connect with somebody who plays with you because people like to play with somebody else. And if it's not a friend, then it could be a stranger. It will be a stranger, and they could be a pedophile. And before you know it, they make friends with you, and then they lie, and then whatever. It's the most useful game for the pedophile, or it's an instrument in the hand of the pedophile. Okay, so now I came into the living room, and he was playing that game, and I go, who are you playing with? He goes, I don't know him. And I go, you're playing with a stranger? And he goes, yeah, but he doesn't know who I am. I go, and I told his dad, and he goes, we've told you not to play. But again, if he's playing by himself and all that. So I feel like parents are naive, or if I feel like parents are like turning their head, don't do that. We can no longer afford that. You know that 1 out of 4 in the United States of America by the age of 18 will have been approached, solicited for sex. 1 out of 4. That's high. I have 12 grandkids. So that's like 3 of them, 3.5 or whatever, 3 of them. Out of 12 grandkids, possibly 3 will be approached, solicited for trafficking, sex trafficking. That's high. And
So that's not just for sex, like some random boyfriend in high school. That's actually for
exactly
being trafficked.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And then every 30 seconds in the world, a child is kidnapped or, trafficked. Every 30 seconds. This is high. High. So all the pedophiles in the area in Vegas here and you have access in Nashville to see where they live. They're probably active, but we don't know it.
So we know there's a problem. People probably have learned a lot on this call about how big the problem really is. But what can they do besides being more aware of what the heck your child's doing?
Well, start with your family and then begin to get involved in your community. Find out how it's being done in your community because, if it's being done in Africa, well, how are you going to go there? But I would find out, okay, hey, call the police, the police force, and say, hey, how can we help? What's going on? Find the organizations in your area that are actually active into that. Like when I talked to Free International, I realized they're doing a whole lot in the community to rescue and to bring services and healing in their lives and try to, empower the women or the survivors and making aware. I mean, seriously, there's kids that are missing in every city. Try to find those kids. What are the kids? Find the pictures. They have the pictures and the description of every kid that is missing in your city.
Mm.
It's amazing, right? So become more aware, look for signs, call the police and find out who you need to call when you see something. It has to become like part of your everyday life awareness, Yeah.
Absolutely. I would, my suggestion would also be it's really one of the most profound things we do as an organization. When we don't have an answer to something and we're looking for it, we do this one thing and it's so crazy how we almost always get exactly what we need. You know what that is?
Yeah. Yes. What is it?
We consult Google and we just type it in and we say, how can I help in human trafficking in my area? Or human trafficking, ending human trafficking in my neighborhood. Just Google it, people. It's not that freaking hard. And so just start talking about you're going to attract other people interested in it. And it's very, very empowering. We have some awesome ones here in Tennessee. And if you can't be part of the rescue squad, you may be able to come in and teach classes to the women getting out of trafficking. You may be able to offer your house as a safe home. There's so many different ways to get at one of your spare houses. There's so many ways to get involved that you're definitely needed. And it does start, I like what you said, it starts with you working on not watching porn, not engaging it, not promoting it, not buying it. And then it starts with educating the family and those You can share worth fighting for posts that is education. And getting more people aware of it. You can get involved in volunteering, offering your resources, your own education. There's so many cool things you can do. So don't feel powerless ever. Well, Denise, this has been such an amazing talk. I want to ask you one more question.
Okay. I hope it's not too hard.
Well, you are great at going through difficult things. Again, you've been such an inspiring leader. You always focus on what's going right and finding a way to get through things. But if you had one piece of advice that has helped you the most in your life for being a force for good in the world, what would you share with our listeners?
I think it's to turn the most difficult moment or season or time in your life for a more horrific thing that could have happened to you or you have been part of, and to and turn it to good. Turn it, get so much of a resolve and a healing about it. Like for example, when my brother committed suicide, I was determined that that was not going to destroy our family. But from the discovery of receiving healing, walking through it all, I realized that God wants to take that, really, because I'm a Christian, so God has a big part in my life, but he wants to take that and turn it to good. He wants to bring his love, his presence, his restoration in there. And, then I have hope. Because whenever you're going through a tough time, when there's a hope deferred in your life, it makes your heart sick. But when there's healing, there's fulfilled desires, when there's the presence of love, that when there's love in your life, then it produces good stuff, good fruit, a tree of life, exactly what the Bible says. So I think to find love in the middle of trouble, in the middle of the valley of trouble, let me tell you, it causes you that when you walk in a room, love walks in. Love walks in, no matter what you are going through. What you are going through and what's going on around you is not your source of joy and love. It's what God has put inside of you, and it's just like that's what comes out. And so, whatever is going on in my life, it's not going to take away my joy.
Oof. Do you have practical tip for how somebody else can do that if they don't really know how to do what you just said?
Yeah. Well, listen, like I'm going through a really tough time right now, but I have a woman whose daughter is probably being trafficked right now. And I'm like, hey, I want to see how I can help her. I want to bring her in here so Annie and I can see if we can actually make a difference in her life. No matter what is going on in my life, I'm going to look for someone who needs it more than me. Ooh. It's like that key thing. Remember that key thing? You put like, let's say, courage on that key, and it's a giving key.
The giving key.
Yeah. And you wear that because you need courage. Someone gave it to you. But then when you see someone else that needs it more than you take that and you say, here's the giving key, and I'm giving you courage here. Just receive it, take it, because I have experienced, an increase of courage, and I see that you need it more than me. It's like, you got to get out of your self-life, really. I refuse to be a victim of what's going on in my life. I want to use that and turn it to love somehow and be unoffendable. Man, we got to forgive. We've got to forgive, and we've got to forgive every day. Because I even saw my friend who lost 2 kids, and within 6 months, she lost 2 kids. One to murder, 22-year-old son, wrong place, wrong time. She lost her son at 22. He was 22. And 6 months later, her daughter, who was 16, she died on a 4-wheeler, broke her neck. 6 months apart. Yeah. Then she went to trial for the murder, the trial for the murder. And she got up in the court, my friend, and she said that she did not want, because he had the death penalty that was coming to him. And she said, I refused to allow the death penalty to be given to him. I forgive you, Brandon, for killing my son 2 years ago. And I want to give you the opportunity to live so that you can get to know the one who created you and why he put you on this earth. And she ended up, after the trial, and I saw it all. After the trial, she ended up loving on the family of the murderer, just hugging them. And they were thanking her. And she even had cancer during that time. And she lost her husband. Oh my gosh. In 4 years. 4 years. When I saw that, and that happened, like it started 9 years ago. She just wrote a book, Beyond Unthinkable. You might want to have her on, but she's amazing. So, but I watched that and I go, what? And not once Was she bitter or angry with God or with people or whatever? Man, she did not allow herself to be offended to that point. Did she grieve? Yes, she grieved really well in a sense that we need to grieve. But so friends, we're here for such a short time, and let's live a life of no regret. But love has got to be at, love wins. Love is everything. So if love is just all about you, you're going to be some skinny person at the end of your life and just think, wow, I have all kinds of regrets. If I'd known more, if I'd known, I would have loved more. I would have spent more time. I would have put more value on people, because that's what counts. So that's my
Girl, I want you to keep talking for the next 3 hours. That was amazing. Thank you. Well, Denise, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for helping us to use our life to be an even more powerful force for good, but also to just walk in the essence of love. The hardest thing for me during this call was not being able to take so many notes because you help me go deeper in my life. You help me be more of a human. I am really good at business, and walking with you and going places with you, it's been interesting because I'm sustainability, blah, blah, blah. And when I invest in something, it comes back. And I think it's really good. I think it's even a good approach to nonprofits. But when you meet with a person, I watch you pour in love, and just listen. And you're so present. And when you're that present, people change because they feel a real love connection, not I'm needing you for something, or you're a number to me, or whatever. You'll spend all day, you'll drop everything, you'll just be with someone. And so you have taught me how to love deeper, how to give more, and to recognize what matters most, more than anything. Things are things. And I feel I understand that really well, but you really live it and you walk it out. So thank you very much for today. Listeners, if you want to find her, we've got all of her contact information, how you can connect, how you can support Denise, and how you can ask her your questions in the link below. Thank you, Denise. God bless you. You are amazing.
Thank you so much, Britnie. I love you. You're awesome.